He left without a word. And then years later, I got a letter from him. Hey everyone, today's story is a long one and has a really unexpected ending. So grab your tea, your blanket, and let's begin. And no, honestly, I've lost count of how many times I've tried to write this, but maybe that doesn't matter. For me, it's a huge part of my life, and I hope for someone out there it'll be more than just a story. My name is Amber, and when I think about him, my heart still clenches. Not from pain, no, but from that strange mix of warmth, longing, and a kind of weightless sadness. He was my first love, the kind people write about in old diaries, the kind you remember, not by dates, but by the smell of his hoodie, by his voice through your headphones, by how your fingers trembled when he looked straight into your eyes. I had just finished high school. He was a year ahead of me. His name was Nick. He wasn't flashy, didn't hang with the cool crowd, but he was that guy, the one with the always unzipped jacket, a worn-out notebook with song lyrics scribbled in the margins, and some obscure rock in his MP3 player that I later secretly looked up online. And I fell for him. Not right away at first, I just watched. From a distance, he seemed different, calm, smart, kind, not like those loud boys laughing in the hallway or flexing their new iPods. We met by accident. I had forgotten my keys in the library. He was there too, writing something, hunched over the desk. When I came in, he looked up, and I froze. Then he simply said, "Amber, right?" "How do you know?" I asked, flustered. "You're top of the class in chemistry. Even the teacher uses you as an example." Later that night I laughed, not out of pride, but out of that silly, giddy joy that he even knew who I was. And after that, it was like a movie. We started texting, accidentally bumping into each other after school, talking for hours about the weather, books, music. For the first time, I let myself open up. I wrote to him at night, shared my thoughts, my dreams, my fears. And he shared his too. Our first kiss? In the rain, no umbrella, no words, just like it was meant to happen. Everything about him felt right. I didn't just fall in love, I melted into it. I couldn't imagine life without him. He was in everything, my days, my skin, my thoughts. We were together almost 2 years, and in that time, he became my whole world. It wasn't just teenage romance, he became part of my family. My dad admired him for being honest, my mom for how gently he treated me. And me, I kept falling deeper and deeper into him. He helped me with exams, waited outside after class, brought me chocolate when I was having a rough day. And then, one day, he simply said, "I love you even if it's foolish, even if you change your mind. I'm already in too deep." He had this sweet habit, texting me even when we just parted ways. "You look so beautiful today, I forgot how to talk. You know, I want to see you always, even when you're right next to me." It was sweet. It was ours. And then, one day, he just sent a message. "Sorry, I'm with someone else. I'm leaving, don't look for me." And that was it. No call, no explanation, nothing. I read that text message 10 times, as if the words might magically change. I called him, unreachable. Texted, nothing. Went to his place, no one opened the door. It wasn't just a breakup, it felt like the air had disappeared, like everything I stood on had been wiped away. No more us, no more forever, just emptiness. I don't remember much from that night. I just sat on the floor, my back against the wall, staring at nothing, trying just to breathe. Each breath felt like glass. Every thought a punch to the chest. I was frantic. One moment, I wanted to run to him, scream, demand answers. The next, I just wanted to disappear. I paced the room, around and around. I cried, I screamed, I sobbed into my pillow, until there was nothing left but silence. Sometimes I'd just stare out the window, hoping the answer might come from there. The next day, I went back to his house. I stood there, knocked. Nothing. I tracked down all his friends. No one knew anything. Some couldn't meet my eyes. Some muttered, "Well, maybe it just burned out." But me, I was burning from the inside. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. All I did was rewind everything in my mind. Every look, every joke, every promise. Until one day I just collapsed. Literally. I walked out of the house and blacked out. They rushed me to the hospital. Diagnosis, exhaustion, emotional breakdown, severe psychological stress. I woke up in a hospital room. White ceiling, silence, a ringing in my ears, and inside, nothing. My mom was sitting beside me. She held my hand and whispered, "You're not alone, baby. I'm here. I'm here." But I didn't care. I looked straight through her, as if my body was there, but my soul lost somewhere in the dark. I spent almost a month in that clinic. I didn't speak, didn't touch my phone, didn't want to look in the mirror because the girl staring back wasn't me. They brought food. I turned away. Mom came every day, sometimes Dad, sometimes my sister. They talked, they tried, but I didn't hear them. I was off, like a house with all the lights off. No one home, no feelings, no thoughts, just echoes. A couple of weeks passed, and something shifted. Not healed, not better, just quieter. I started eating, started listening. My mom cried. For the first time in front of me. When I asked her to pour me some tea, it was the first thing I'd asked for in a whole month. When I was discharged, I didn't go back home. I couldn't. Everything there reminded me of him, of us. So I stayed with my aunt for a while. Small guest room, smelled like apples and cinnamon and warmth, real warmth. I slept, I read, I stared out the window. Sometimes I wrote in my journal, sometimes I cried. Friends came by, but I rarely opened the door. I was scared to let anyone in again. Because now, I knew the pain always comes from the ones you open your heart to. Months passed. Eventually, I returned to my hometown, rented a tiny room near campus, enrolled in evening classes. Not because I cared about school, but because I needed something, anything, to keep me from falling apart. Every day felt the same. Coffee, same time, same road to college, same faces, none of whom I could let near me. Until one day, Sasha, my childhood best friend, barged into my room. No warning. "All right, enough. You're not some ghost. You're alive, and we're going to a damn cafe." "I don't want to," I muttered, looking away. "Don't care. You promised me once, if I ever dragged you out, you wouldn't say no. Well, I'm dragging." We sat in a loud, crowded place, but inside me, there was a vacuum. She talked, she joked, told stories about some guy in her class. And suddenly, I smiled. Not on purpose, just a reflex. She froze, stared at me. There, it happened. History has been made. And we both burst out laughing. That moment was the first real emotion I'd felt in what seemed like forever. Not sadness, not fear, but a flicker of something warm, something light. And from that day on, I started to come back to life. 0.5% at first, then 1. And then, he appeared. That's the end of the first chapter of this story. But the story itself is far from over. Before we continue, I want to pause, just for a moment, and ask you, do you remember your first love? What was it like? Did you part ways, or are you still together? Man, go ahead, pause the video, and please share your stories in the comments. We really do want to hear them. And now, let's continue. I noticed him a couple of weeks after that meeting with Sasha. We were at the same cafe. By then, I'd almost gotten used to it. He was sitting at the next table, tall, messy hair, and a t-shirt with a funny slogan. "Don't text your ex." I smirked. He caught my eye, raised an eyebrow like he was saying, "Funny, huh?" I looked away. But he stood up and came over. "Sorry, you smiled, and I haven't seen anyone smile here in over a week." I blushed. "Not sure that's really a reason to come over. Then maybe you'll give me one?" he said with a smile. The kind of smile people give when they're not trying to impress you. We talked for about 10 minutes. Then, an hour. He was an upperclassman, studied architecture, smart, unassuming. He didn't push, didn't rush, and he didn't ask anything personal. That's what made me trust him. We met a few more times at that same cafe, and then he invited me out for an evening walk. I hesitated. That familiar wave of fear stirred inside me, but something deep down whispered, "Say yes." We walked until midnight. He told me how he used to build cardboard houses as a kid. I told him about drawing cartoons and dreaming of becoming an artist. And then out of nowhere he said, "You're beautiful when you talk about your dreams. You're alive. You're strong." I froze. Those words, it was like someone gently blew the dust off my heart. I looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to run. After that walk, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, replaying the way he looked at me. No pressure, no expectations, just warmth. The next day, no message. And the day after, still nothing. I caught myself waiting, and then I got mad. At him, at myself, at that stupid echo in my chest. What if, again? But then, a few days later, a message came. "If you don't mind, I'd love to hear you talk about cartoons again, shall we?" I smiled and replied, "Yes." After that, we started seeing each other more often. Sometimes a walk by the river, sometimes that old park, sometimes a cozy bookstore that smelled like coffee and dusty pages. He never asked about my past, never poked at the places that hurt, but he felt it. He noticed when I drifted into silence, when my answers got shorter than they should have been. And in those moments, he'd just make a silly face or ask, "Want to get some ice cream?" And as silly as it sounds, I could breathe again. Over time, we started meeting almost every day, and I stopped being afraid. I learned not to expect hidden meaning behind every gesture. I learned to laugh without flinching. I learned how to live again. The first time he held my hand, I tensed, but I didn't pull away. He felt it and gently said, "I'm not in a hurry. I'm here for as long as you want me to be." And in that moment, I knew he wasn't Sasha. He wasn't anyone from my past. He was himself, the one who brought me back to life. It took a few months for me to finally allow myself to be happy. At first, cautiously, then more confidently, day by day. We officially started dating, went to the movies, cooked together, argued about coffee. He always joked that I took tea way too seriously, and I'd tell him he smiled too much to be considered normal. But that ease, that lightness, it healed me. For the first time, I stopped overthinking every little thing. I just lived. I just loved. He met my parents. My mom hugged him like she'd known him for years. My dad shook his hand and simply said, "Take care of her." And he replied, "With all my heart." Then came the first "I love you." No candles, no speeches, just in the kitchen early morning while I was scratching his dog behind the ear and talking about cartoons. He looked at me and said, "You're my family." I didn't answer right away. The tears rolled down on their own, but they weren't the painful kind. They were light, free. A year later, he proposed, in that same park where we'd walked for the first time. The ring was simple, but in his eyes was everything. At our wedding, I cried. So did he. We both knew what I'd survived, and we both knew this love wasn't born from fantasy. It was born from strength. Soon, we had a small house on the edge of town. Then, a daughter. And later, a son. And you know, I never thought I'd be laughing in the mornings, washing up with kids splashing around or waiting at the door, heart pounding, just to hear his footsteps coming home. But now, that's my reality. I don't live in the past. I'm grateful for the lessons it taught me. But my present is right here. It was just an ordinary evening. The kids were running around the house. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon. I was baking cookies from my grandma's old recipe. My husband was watching cartoons with our son. Our daughter was curled up next to the cat drawing something. I glanced over, and it looked uncannily like our first walk in the park. I was sorting through the mail, just the usual, bills, flyers, random junk, and then a small beige envelope, no stamp, no return address, just my name, written by hand, in the exact handwriting I once knew by heart. Every loop, every line. I froze. Time slowed. The air thickened. My hands started to tremble. I stood by the sink, envelope in hand, unable to breathe. It was from him. Too many years had passed, too many. I slowly sat down on the kitchen stool, carefully opened the letter, and at first, I actually scoffed. Seriously? After all these years? I whispered. Inside, a folded piece of paper, written in that same familiar handwriting. I began reading, at first out loud, mockingly, with a cold, almost bitter tone, as if I was trying to laugh it off, as if to say, "How dare you? How dare you show up like this, out of a past I've buried?" But with each paragraph, his words started digging deeper. My fingers gripped the paper tighter. My chest tightened. I felt my chin begin to tremble, betraying me. And then, tears. Those same tears. The ones that hadn't come in years. I couldn't finish reading. I just placed the letter on my lap and buried my face in my hands. I didn't want the kids to see, or my husband. I needed to be alone. I walked into the bedroom, closed the door, and finally read the letter to the end. Hey, if you're reading this, you're stronger than I ever was. I don't even know where to begin. Back then, all those years ago, I did what I thought was the only way out. I told you I had someone else, that I was leaving, that I didn't love you anymore. What a stupid, cruel lie. Cowardly, heartless, but necessary, or so I thought. I couldn't face you, couldn't tell you the truth, that things were falling apart, not because of you, not even because of me, but because life decided so. That spring, I got diagnosed a tumor, brain. They gave me a few months, maybe less. I watched you from behind the door, heard you knock, heard you whisper, "Please," heard you cry. And I cried too, but I couldn't drag you into that. I chose to be the villain, so you'd hate me, because I knew you'd never love someone else if I died in your arms, and I couldn't bear to see you break like that. I wrote this letter knowing I might not live to send it, so I gave it to a friend, with one request. Don't deliver it until many, many years have passed. Not until the pain had dulled and you were happy again. I loved you to the very end. I'm sorry for everything. Always yours, Nick. I read it again and again and again. Each time, my heart reacted differently. The first, pain. The second, anger. The third, emptiness. I sat down on the floor, laid the letter next to me, and cried. Quietly, not with sobs. But the kind of crying that feels like letting go, saying goodbye to a piece of your soul you didn't realize was still clinging on. A month later, I decided to share this story. For some, it might just be another episode from a stranger's life. But for me, it was a decade of grief, of growth, of rediscovering love. I'm happy now. I have a husband, children, a home, and this letter didn't change that, but it gave me back a part of myself I thought I'd buried forever. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Honestly, there's nothing more to say. This is one of those stories that speaks for itself. A story where you might get lost, or maybe find a piece of yourself. Leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And I'll see you in the next episode.